You are looking for a key, but you don't know it yet. You believe you are watching a video, consuming a story. But what you are about to receive is not a story, it is a map. A map of a place that was built to be forgotten, and a key to a door. Inside your own mind that has been locked since the day you were born. What you do with this knowledge after our time together is over. That choice will define you. Listen closely. In the rolling, mist-haunted hills of northern Pennsylvania, where time itself seems to rot in the damp soil, there once stood a building that had no address on any map. The locals, in hushed tones, called it the Hill House, the quiet farm. But the name carved into the stone archway, now long swallowed by ivy and shadow, read, St. Elora's House of Restoration for Wayward Girls. Established 1862. No one speaks that name aloud anymore. To do so feels like disturbing a grave. The very air around its ruins is heavy, sick with the residue of secrets. The church wanted it forgotten. Society wanted it forgotten. But the dead do not bargain. They wait, and their patience is longer than stone. I wasn't looking for St. Elora when its ghost found me. It was a cold autumn evening, the kind that makes you feel the coming winter in your bones. I was in a university archive, a freelance assignment cataloging parish records from a defunct diocese. Dry work. Names, dates, baptisms, dust, and fading ink. Then, inside a mislabeled crate of funeral notices, I found it. A leather ledger, bound tight with a black ribbon that crumbled at my touch. It smelled of mildew and something acidic, like vinegar and old fear. Stamped in flaking gold script were the words, Inventory, St. Elora's House of Restoration, 1862 to 1891. That name again. A name with no official file, no registry, no land deed in the diocesan records. It was a phantom. I opened it. Inside, 143 entries. A girl's first name, a number, and a final column, marked fate. Clara, 41. Justine, 72. Rosalind, 19. Elsie, 55. And beside most, a single, sterile word, departed. No dates, no destinations, no letters of transfer. Just that hollow word. A few entries were marked only with a stark, black X. Some were left chillingly blank. There were no last names, no family contacts, no trace that these girls had ever been tethered to the world. 143 names, pressed into brittle paper by a hand that felt no remorse. Names no one had spoken in over a century. That night, the dreams began. Faceless girls in gray wool dresses, standing behind windows too narrow to escape through. The sound of a single bell ringing from a tower that wasn't there. Muffled pleas from beneath floorboards. I knew then, I wasn't just reading a record. I was holding a tombstone for 143 souls. The origin of St. Elora was deliberately obscured, buried in whispers and sealed correspondence. But piece by piece, a horrifying picture emerged. In 1861, as the nation tore itself apart in civil war, a cloistered nun from Baltimore named Mother Agatha Vale proposed a radical solution to the era's moral panic. With orphanages overflowing and families fractured, she saw an opportunity. Her vision, she claimed, came from the Virgin Mary herself, a mandate to build a moral reformatory, a sanctuary to cleanse young women of impure inclinations. She wasn't building a school. She was building a fortress against the world. And she would be its absolute queen. The church quietly purchased 17 acres of remote, forested land. Within months, the stone walls rose, 18 inches thick. Windows like arrow slits, high and barred. Doors of solid oak, bolted from the outside. No telegraph lines, no public visitors, no oversight. Saint Elora was a black site. Sanctified by God, it had only 3 tools: doctrine, discipline, and a silence so profound it became a weapon. The first girls arrived in the dead of winter, 1862. Some were true orphans. Others were from wealthy families, who paid handsomely to have their daughters disappear. Their crimes: defiance, promiscuity, or simply being too intelligent, too curious, too alive for the comfort of polite society. In return for their tuition and their silence, the families were promised salvation for their daughters. But the price of that salvation was the girl herself. According to fragments of a letter from a groundskeeper named Elias Furlow, discovered decades later in his grandson's Bible, the girls were stripped of everything upon arrival. Their names were replaced with numbers. Their hair was cropped to the scalp. Their clothes were replaced with coarse gray wool, and their voices were taken from them. They are to be like lambs, he wrote, silent and clean before the slaughter. This was his first glimpse into the machine, a glimpse that terrified him. He was just a groundskeeper, a man with a family. To speak out would mean ruin, perhaps worse. He saw the evil, but he was trapped by it. He now stood at a crossroads, burdened with a horrifying glimpse of the truth. In his place, faced with that suffocating evil, what would you have done? Stayed silent to survive, or risked everything to speak? Comment your first instinct below. Mother Agatha Vale saw herself not as a warden, but as a mystic surgeon, excavating sin from the very marrow of these girls. She believed repentance required not just prayer, but a breaking of the self. Her methods were a twisted blend of ancient asceticism and modern psychological warfare. Fasting until the point of collapse. Forced vigils in unlit, coffin-sized reflection. Chambers. She did not see it as cruelty. She saw it as purification. Every empire of control, every kingdom of pain, is built by architects. Mother Agatha was the visionary, but her throne rested on 4 pillars of devoted cruelty. Each played their part with the chilling precision of a watchmaker. First, there was Sister Marcella, the arm of correction. Tall, gaunt, with hands as calloused as a stonemason's, Marcella was the enforcer. She had come from a brutal penal convent in Normandy, a place where pain was seen as a holy language. Beneath her own habit, she wore a leather strap wrapped tight around her ribs, a constant, personal reminder of divine suffering. She oversaw all discipline, physical and psychological. A girl who spoke out of turn, who met a sister's gaze for too long, was sentenced to the stations of reflection. A ritualized punishment where each station corresponded to a new form of humiliation, starvation, or restraint. A surviving note, scrawled by a girl on a scrap of linen, reads, "She made me kneel on rice for 2 hours. My legs went dead. She whispered from behind me, 'Let your body break, so your spirit might live.'" Marcella didn't leave bruises. She left what she called the flowerings of obedience. Next, Sister Eugenie, the healer of the mind. Where Marcella broke the body, Eugenie unraveled the soul. With a soft voice and a deceptively gentle manner, she managed the infirmary. She offered healing tinctures and cleansing teas to the girls. But she was a master of chemical manipulation. Before taking her vows, she had been an apothecary. Her locked cabinet contained not medicine, but tools of control. Foxglove, belladonna, laudanum, substances that induced fevered visions, blurred memory, and created a profound sense of disembodiment. The girls who drank her infusions would have terrifying or ecstatic hallucinations. These were not treated as side effects. They were harvested as confessions. Girls who saw demons were sent to isolation for purification. Girls who saw angels were paraded in the chapel as proof of Saint Elora's success. Their delusions, manufactured in Eugenie's workshop, became instruments of control. She kept meticulous records of each girl's dosage, tolerance, and psychological breaking point. She called it spiritual pharmacology. It was mind control, sanctified and systematic. Then, there was Brother Thorn, the builder. The only man permitted on the grounds, Thorn was a silent, looming presence. He claimed to be a defrocked Jesuit, but no record of his ordination ever existed. With ink-blotched palms and yellowed fingernails, he moved like a shadow. He built the reflection chambers. He dug the tunnels that allowed the staff to move unseen between the walls. He designed the night corridors. At night, he supervised the quiet choir, a rotating group of heavily sedated girls forced to perform maintenance in absolute silence. Their movements sluggish and ghost-like. Whispers in sealed church letters described Thorn's private experiments. Tools would vanish from the workshop. The incinerator in the laundry house burned at all hours, even on hot summer nights. The chapel basement was always locked, and no one dared ask why. His boots were often caked in fresh mud long after the sun had set. Finally, and perhaps most insidiously, there was Sister Isolde, the keeper of the record. If Marcella broke the body and Eugenie broke the mind, Isolde erased the memory. She made the world forget these girls ever existed. She handled all external communication. She wrote letters to inquiring families, perfectly forging the handwriting and mimicking the speech patterns of their daughters. "Your daughter is progressing marvelously," she would write. "She is not yet ready for earthly distractions." She maintained 2 ledgers. The first was the White Ledger, the official record for the diocese. It listed admissions, baptisms, and transfers to other institutions, transfers that never happened. But hidden beneath the floorboards of her cot, wrapped in oilcloth, was the Red Ledger. It had no names, only numbers, and brutal, cryptic notations. Number 31, refused communion. Removed. Number 58, spoke during night silence, confession failed. Transferred. Number 112, attempted escape, reassigned TT. What TT stood for would not become clear until much, much later. Together, these 4 architects, under the divine mandate of Mother Agatha, created a closed loop, a self-sustaining machine of purification and erasure. By 1870, the population of St. Elora hovered around 60 girls at any given time. Yet their annual intake was nearly 30. The math didn't add up. Where were the others going? There were no graves on the property, no departure notices, no transfer records that could be verified. The numbers didn't rise, and they didn't fall, because the system was designed to process and dispose of its subjects. And the world, distracted by war and disease, looked away. One fragment from a journal, confiscated and later discovered in the walls of a nearby barn, was written by a girl named Clara Mallon. It reads, "I am not allowed to say my name. They call me 41. I have not seen the sun in 5 months. My friend Elsie was taken during night prayers. Her bed is empty. Her name is gone. No one speaks of her. The silence is thicker than the walls. I think she died. I think I will too." The world never ran out of girls for St. Elora. The intake process was not benevolent. It was an algorithm of control, lubricated by fear, profit, and the silent complicity of good people who learned not to ask questions. It began with a letter. For the wealthy, it was a discreet arrangement. If a daughter became an inconvenience to willful, too intelligent, too much of a Womana family priest would recommend St. Elora as a place of moral retreat. A large donation was made. A carriage was sent at dusk. No return date was scheduled. In exchange, the family received periodic letters, handwritten by Sister Isolde in the girl's own script, assuring them of her spiritual progress. A perfect, clean transaction of erasure. For the poor and the orphaned, the process was more direct. They were swept up by the Church's Moral Custody Act, a policy that allowed girls deemed at risk of impropriety to be institutionalized without trial or defense. A whisper was all it took. A girl seen laughing with a boy, walking alone after dark, or reading a forbidden book. They arrived at St. Elora in the dead of night, sometimes in chains. They were the ones who fought, who screamed, who clawed at the iron-bolted doors, but after a week in a reflection chamber and a few sips of Sister Eugenie's cleansing tea, the fight drained out of them. They became docile, suggestible, empty. Once inside, each girl's fate was sealed by a classification system known only to the staff. They were not girls, they were assets to be managed. GC, grave candidate. FS, fit for servitude. TT, to be transferred. C, spiritually irretrievable. This label, assigned within hours of arrival by Mother Agatha herself, dictated everything. Her diet, her chores, her dormitory, her ultimate end. They branded them with these labels, not to heal them, but to invalidate them, to make their future screams sound like madness. Have you ever felt the weight of a label someone else forced upon you? If you feel comfortable, share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters here. The girls labeled FS, fit for servitude, were groomed for a specific purpose. They were trained in laundry, cooking, and mending. They were fed just enough to remain healthy. They were kept docile through routine and low-level sedation. When they were deemed ready, they were not released. They were sold. Through a network of wealthy church patrons, these girls were placed in households as indentured servants. The contracts, signed by St. Elora's leadership in the girls' name, condemned them to a life of unpaid labor. The families who took them believed they were performing an act of charity, rescuing a fallen woman. In truth, they were purchasing a trauma-bonded slave, one who would never speak out, never ask for more, never run. Those labeled GC, grave candidate, were different. They were the defiant ones. The girls who held on to a flicker of self, who resisted the drugs, who fought back. Their fate was swift and absolute. Within a month of receiving their classification, they would simply disappear. Sometimes from the reflection chambers, sometimes from the infirmary. But always, their path ended at the furnace behind the laundry house, lit nightly by Brother Thorn. The ledger never used the word death. It used departed, ascended, or left a blank space. An administrative void where a human life used to be. Then there were the TT girls, to be transferred. These were often the most intelligent, the most observant, the ones who noticed the patterns, who remembered the names of the disappeared, who asked the wrong questions at the wrong time. They were marked for transfer, but no transfer ever occurred. One of the only known survivors, a woman who escaped in 1892 and lived as a silent laysister in Vermont, left a single note hidden in the hollow of her crucifix. It was found after her death. They came for her after Vespers. Always two of them. One held a lantern, the other a rope. The girl would be gagged. We were taught not to look, not to cry out. We were told they were going to serve in heaven's vineyard. But I heard the screams from the basement, and I saw that the fire behind the laundry never went out. The selection was a form of spiritual warfare. Even girls who survived the first year were not safe. The longer a girl stayed, the more she remembered, the more dangerous she became. If she started forming friendships, sharing whispers of the truth, she was quickly flagged for what Sister Isolde called the spark of re-individuation, a direct threat to the ecosystem of absolute obedience. Those girls were either broken, again, more thoroughly this time, or they were removed. There was no third option. The most chilling artifact was recovered from a collapsed drainpipe in 1974. A baptismal record. Its edges scorched. On it, 23 girls' names had been scrubbed away with acid. Only one remained legible: Clara Mallon, baptized 1864, beside her name. The word erased was etched into the paper with a pin. St. Elora was engineered for silence. The stone floors, the lime-plastered walls, the double-lined ceilings. Every surface was designed to absorb sound. Doors were solid pine, reinforced with iron. Windows were sealed shut. Even the birds seemed to avoid the courtyard. The silence was not an absence of sound. It was a weapon of erasure. For the first 30 days, every new girl was placed on vocal fasting. No speaking, no whispering, no humming, not even an audible cry. A single infraction earned you time in a reflection chamber. An unlit cell, no larger than a coffin, stood. On end, some girls emerged from these cells shattered. Others never emerged at all. The building itself was a machine. The dormitories were in one wing, the chapel and the incinerator in another, connected by a long, straight spine. The cellars beneath were a labyrinth of punishment cells and storage rooms, linked by tunnels only the staff could navigate. Every hallway had hidden spicelets. Every dormitory had a bolted trapdoor leading to the cellar. At night, Brother Thorne patrolled the halls, a silent specter, his lantern the only light. The girls called him the Shadow Man. You would hear the jingle of his keyring a second too late. The dormitories had unspoken names. The Hall of Salt, where newcomers stayed, their knees raw from being forced to scrub the stone floors. The Dorm of Grace, for the obedient girls, being groomed for placement as servants. And the Cold Ward, where the sick, the defiant, and the broken were taken. Few ever returned. The beds were numbered. Every morning, each bed was stripped and remade, whether the girl who slept there was still present or not. Clara Mallon, number 41, kept a piece of chalk hidden in her mattress seam. Each time a girl vanished from her dorm, she would secretly mark a cross on the underside of her wooden bed slat. By her 12th week, there were 6 marks. By the end of spring, 13. She kept their names in her head like a prayer. Elsie, who whispered jokes during laundry. Winifred, who cried silently in her sleep. Jo, who traced birds on the dusty walls with her finger. Each one gone. One night they were there. By morning their bed was stripped, their number gone from the slate. No one asked. To ask was to invite punishment, not just for yourself, but for the entire dorm. Communal atonement, Sister Marcella called it. The girls called it the weeping fast. 3 days without food, listening to a single hymn on repeat. Afterward, the questions stopped. One of the few fragments of Clara's writing, scratched beneath a floorboard, reads, "I tried to speak to Winifred today. She turned away. Her eyes are always wide now, as if she sees something the rest of us can't. Last night, she sat straight up in bed and said, 'The fire is coming.' Then she lay down and slept. This morning, she was gone. The air grew thick with unspoken terror. Girls learned to sleep facing the door, to eat without making a sound, to never make a friend. They learned that curiosity was a fatal sin. They learned that the staff were not trying to save them, they were trying to unmake them. The fire started in the laundry house, just after midnight, in the late autumn of 1866. The official cause was a stray lantern. The official toll was 3 girls, their names conveniently unrecorded, but the bones found in the ashes were chained together at the ankles. Mother Agatha requested a new staff member, someone with medical training, someone devout and quiet. She got Sister Corvina Bell. Corvina was 24, bright-eyed, and had served as a nurse in the war. She had seen death, but she had never seen a place like St. Elora. The first thing she noticed was the cold. An unnatural stillness that leached warmth from the air. Sister Marcella gave her the tour, her words clipped and final. No unnecessary questions. No journals. All letters are reviewed by Sister Isolda. Corvina's duties were simple: tend to minor wounds from spiritual correction, distribute medicine. But her first week, she noticed a pattern. Every few nights, a group of girls, always between 12 and 15 years old, would be missing from their beds between 2 and 4 in the morning. They would return before sunrise, pale, exhausted, sometimes limping. They never spoke of where they had been. One night, Corvina saw it herself. Brother Thorn, holding a lantern, leading a line of 6 barefoot, glassy-eyed girls down the stairs behind the chapel, toward the incinerator wing. They moved like sleepwalkers. She pressed herself into the shadows, her heart pounding against the cold stone. She wouldn't see those girls again for 3 days. When she asked Sister Eugenie where they had gone, Eugenie offered a serene, chilling smile. They attend the night choir. It is not for the newly arrived to understand. Corvina began to keep a secret log, tucked between the pages of her psalter. October 16th, girls 13, 28, gone from dorm. Girl 22, has bruising on wrists. October 21st, heard weeping from cellar, door locked. October 24th, girl named Let, removed. From garden duty, returned with blank stare. Has not spoken. She tried to talk to the girls, but most looked through her. One whispered, "Don't ask. It calls them." Corvina started to unravel. She stopped sleeping. She checked her own door lock 3, 4 times a night. One evening, she returned to her cat to find her psalter missing. In its place, a slip of paper with Mother Agatha's script. Obedience is peace. Silence is sanctity. Curiosity is pride. The next day, she was reassigned to inventory old baptismal records of punishment, disguised as clerical work. And there, in a water-damaged crate, she found it. A register with scorched edges. 17 names of girls, all marked Dio Vocata, called by God in 1866. None of those names were in any official ledger. And one name, Mariel Coates, was the same name she had seen scratched in dried blood on the inside of a cabinet in the infirmary. She realized the truth. The laundry fire hadn't been an accident. It was a purge. That night, she broke the rules. At 3 a.m., she followed the ghost of Thorn's lantern light down to the locked door behind the chapel. It was open. The corridor beyond smelled of bleach and old fear. On the walls were iron hooks and restraints. In the corner was a small, canvas-covered mound the size of a child. She fled. When she confronted Mother Agatha, the old nun simply nodded. "You were not ready. Now you are. It is time for your own vow of silence." That night, Sister Corvina Bell was moved to the cold ward. She would remain there, another ghost in the machine. For 11 months, the incinerator was the dark heart of St. Elora. Its chimney was perpetually black with soot, a constant plume of smoke rising against the sky, summer and winter. The girls called it the Wall of Ash. They whispered that the stones near it were always warm, that if you pressed your ear to the bricks, you could hear breathing. Brother Thorn had built it himself, an enormous brick furnace with iron doors the size of coffins. Officially, it burned laundry and refuse. Unofficially, it burned evidence. Behind the furnace, in Thorn's locked workshop, was another ledger. No names, just numbers, dates, weights, and chillingly practical notes. Number 59, volatile. Final weight, 7 pounds. Recommend double cycle. Number 104, expired under sedation. Cremated within 36 hours. The numbers matched the numbers sewn onto The girls' uniforms. The furnace was the final solution for every problem Saint Elora faced. Every girl knew that once you were labeled GC, grave candidate, your time was short. You would be summoned to the narrow ascension, a final, private hymn sung in the chapel. Then you would walk the path to the wall of ash. You would not return. The system was an enterprise. Mother Agatha managed the finances from wealthy donors and placements. Sister Isolde forged the paperwork. The letters to families filled with lies about their daughters finding peace in mission fields or succumbing to a noble illness. Sister Eugenie mixed the poisons. Brother Thorn managed the disposal. And Sister Marcella kept the living silent through terror. Each disappearance was perfectly documented to point nowhere. Each family received a beautifully scripted lie. In 1876, a priest named Father Dwyer was sent to investigate vague rumors. He was given a curated tour. He saw docile girls embroidering linens. He heard beautiful hymns. He was presented with a hand-stitched stole as a gift. His report to the archdiocese read, "Saint Elora is a shining example of redemptive education. I observed no misconduct." The 6 girls who had embroidered his gift were gone within a month of his departure. The furnace kept burning, year after year, until the very stones of the asylum were stained gray with its work, until the grass around it refused to grow. The full scale of the conspiracy is now clear. A self-contained, self-policing system of abuse sanctified by the Church and ignored by the world. But before I reveal the final, explosive event that brought these walls down, I ask you a question. When a system is this corrupt, is it better to reform it from within, or must it be shattered completely? There is no easy answer. Let me know your thoughts. They believed Clara Mallon was dead. Vanished in 1862, marked unsuitable, another ghost. For the cold ward, but Clara hadn't died. She had escaped, and she had spent 18 years preparing to return. She came back in 1880, not as a victim, but as an avenger, cloaked in the habit of a visiting nun. She called herself Sister Elora Miles. She was 34 now. Her hair streaked with gray, her eyes holding an unnerving stillness. She knew the asylum's secrets. She knew where the hidden ledgers were kept, where the loose floorboards creaked, where the ashes were swept. Mother Agatha, now frail but no less cunning, greeted her with rehearsed hospitality. "I go where I'm needed," Clara replied, a serene smile on her face. At night, Clara moved through the asylum like a phantom, mapping the changes, noting the new, more efficient systems of control. The night choir was still active, but the girls were younger, their spirits broken faster. The incinerator now burned only once a week, more discreet. She watched from the shadows as 2 more girls were led beneath the chapel. Neither returned. She found Sister Isolde, now nearly blind, still transcribing lies into ledgers. "These girls come to us in pieces," the old nun rasped. "We shape them back into obedience." Clara asked about Joanna Wren, the girl who had escaped years before. Isolde's face remained a mask. "The wolf always returns to sniff its own trail." Clara's voice was a whisper of ice. "Some wolves come back with fire." She began smuggling evidence out. Scraps of numbered uniforms, copies of burial records, names that existed nowhere else. Every 3 days, a courier would take a package, marked with a broken bell, but her time was running out. Sister Marcella watched her too closely. On the morning of September 2nd, Clara found a note on her cot. "Your silence was your strength. You have spoken too much." That evening, she was summoned. The chamber beneath the chapel was now organized, clinical. Chains had been replaced by canvas restraints. Sister Marcella waited for her. I remember your eyes, Marcella said. You were supposed to be one of the good ones. I was, Clara said, her voice steady. I carried every name. I never forgot them. Marcella stepped forward, a cloth soaked in chloroform in her hand. You'll forget them now. But Clara moved first. From her sleeve, she produced a vial of lamp oil. In her other hand, a striker. She doused the cloth, the wall, her own sleeve. I didn't come here to die, she whispered, but I'm not leaving without burning the lies from these stones. And she struck the flame. The fire didn't destroy St. Elora, but it broke its heart. It scorched the chapel floor, cracked the altar, and melted the nameplate on the incinerator door. When the smoke cleared, Clara was gone. All that remained were ashes and her psalter, left open to a damning verse. They crush your people, O Lord. They kill the widow and the soldier and murder the fatherless. The packages she had sent exploded across New England. Newspapers, bishops, and prosecutors received irrefutable proof. Forged ledgers, photos of numbered sleeves, lists of the dead. And yet, no one was ever brought to justice. The church launched an internal inquiry. Mother Agatha was quietly retired to Rome. Sister Isolde vanished, rumored to have drowned. Brother Thorn disappeared. Sister Marcella was transferred and died within a year. The official report stated that while administrative inconsistencies were found, there was no criminal activity. The matter was closed. The asylum was abandoned, left to rot. The walls crumbled, the roof collapsed, and vines crawled over the stones, pulling the secrets back into the earth, but Clara Mallon had planted seeds. Decades later, in 1998, a construction crew demolishing a nearby unrelated orphanage found a rusted metal case hidden in the walls. Inside was a girl's journal from 1862, a list of 143 names, a melted rosary, and a final note, signed CM. If no one remembers us, we vanish twice. Tell the truth, even if no one listens. Tell it anyway. This time, the box didn't disappear. It found its way to a doctoral student who followed the trail, connected the initials, and unearthed the story Clara had spent her life trying to tell. The St. Elora Memory Archive was founded. Descendants were found. Stories suppressed for a century finally came to light. In 2005, a small black stone plaque was placed in the field where the asylum once stood. It reads, "In memory of the silenced. 143 girls, once taken, now remembered. The world is full of buried stories and forgotten voices. If you believe these truths must be dragged into the light, subscribe now and join a community that dares to remember. We will not let them be silenced again."